Hello, everyone. Thank you for waiting while I shared. Carmen says, I'm a nervous wreck over the Katmal announcement. Hope you're all feeling better than I am at the moment. I guess we're all feeling a little ill, right? It was the worst choice he could have made, and he made it. Okay, by the way, I have a short video on that I put up not too long ago. Also, late last night, I put up a progressive short take that you might be interested in as well. They both are on my page and on my YouTube page also. Hi, Kay. And hi, Deborah. How are you? Hi, Lana. How you doing? Hi, Dolores. Thank you for sharing, Dolores. Please, everybody, share. Let's try to get as big a group here as we can. As always. Okay, tonight's topic. Hi, Sandy. How are you doing? But tonight's topic is the COVID-19 and the progress of COVID-19. Oh, which one was a good short take, Lana? I put up two recent short takes. I've got another 3 to go. They're already done. I'm just going to phase them over a couple of days. They're on the so-called executive orders. They're my view of why the so-called executive orders are not going to work. They're just not going to work. No way in hell are they going to work. So, Sandy says, good. I hope that you and Bonnie are well. Yes, we are well. In fact, I got very good news the other day. I took some scans, and it's always good news when scans are negative, you know. And they were negative. Lana says, both, but I was talking about last night. Oh, thank you for that. The last night one was one that was very close to my heart because it was on overt congressional financing. Thanks. It was a little longer than I wanted, but I'm having trouble getting into that 5-minute range. I think so far the only one I've gotten into the 5-minute range with was, or even close, is the Biden video I just did today. Sandy says, hi, girlfriends. Carmen says, got a Wi-Fi extender bar from a neighbor. Perhaps I can use my device for a change. Sandy says, yay. We need to watch for the... yes, please do tell us about the returns on Ilhan Omar tonight. Those are so very important. I would so like to see a victory there. Hey, Paul McGuire from the UK. Very nice of you to tune in. Okay, so I want to start with the latest on COVID from today. Thank you, Lana, for that reply about my tests. Let me get to... Now, let me stop sharing the promo. Even though you can't see it, it is being shared. And I want to share instead the Worldometer coronavirus stats. Let me see. Mm-hmm. You should be able to see it now. It's showing a big ad. But I'll get by the ad. Here we are. I'm going to change this a bit. Change this view a bit. So you see the U.S., if we ignore the very small countries, we're in 8th place right now. The higher one is to the number one ranking, the worse it is in terms of deaths per million. I've ranked these on deaths per million. But you see, we've got 167,150 cases now. And I'm sorry, so 167,150 fatalities now. 5,280,803 cases and 505 deaths per million, which is very high. It is eighth in the world on that particular measure. And every few days, every day, it increases a little more. I think last time we looked, it was at 498, and here it is at 505. Okay, just a couple of days. As the death toll mounts, as the cases mount, and the death toll has been mounting very, very fast, the pressure, I think, on the Trump administration also mounts, because they, of course, are still doing nothing about it. They have no comprehensive plan. Trump has completely mishandled the whole thing. One wag noted today that there's been no noise from the Republicans at all about how poorly the administration has performed with respect to the COVID crisis. And the wag was very quick to mention that it is well to remember that at the time of the Ebola crisis, the Republicans were going crazy with their criticism of the Obama administration at that particular time. And then the wag went further and contrasted the performance of the Obama administration on the Ebola crisis, specifically 11 cases, 11 infections, and two deaths at the time of the Ebola crisis. That stacks up pretty well, I think, compared to 167,150 fatalities and 5,280,803 cases. And you know, both of those things are still undercounted. So COVID is still devastating. It's still devastating the United States. We have no plan from the government. We have states incoherently reopening schools, while the death toll from children is mounting continuously. We see the pressure to open the economy because states are starved for revenue, and nobody's doing anything about it. And they feel they need to open up, and they're risking opening up, in various dimensions. And that's driving the new cases, and that's also driving the fatalities, the new fatalities. Of course, the University of Washington, the Institute for Health Metrics Evaluation, is now projecting that by December 1st, we'll have close to 300,000 fatalities in the United States. 300,000 fatalities. So recently, what pollsters have been saying about the Trump administration is they've been pointing out that the gap between Trump and Biden is narrowing a little bit. It's still, I guess the consensus is it's still something like an 8-point gap, or maybe inclining towards a 6-point gap, but it's closer to where Hillary Clinton was at this time in her race against Trump. And therefore they're saying, well, Trump could still win, bad things could still happen, he still could pull it out. It's a very dicey situation. Well, I want to point out that things are very, very different. In 2016, there was no coronavirus continuing to kill the economy that is bearing down on Trump. There was no situation where Hillary Clinton was responsible for a pandemic that was bearing down on the country. There was no situation where Hillary Clinton could be charged with mismanagement for a pandemic. There was no situation where Hillary Clinton could be charged with mismanaging the economy of the United States. Now, she could be criticized very, very severely for her plans with respect to the economy and her behavior, and there was great hostility to her as a personality. Certainly, all those were in place in 2016. But in 2020, these are not problems of Joe Biden. He can sit back there in his basement. People do not hate Joe Biden in spite of the very many bad things he has done. They're not hostile to him as a personality. He bears no responsibility for the increasing horror of the pandemic and the loss of American lives. He bears no responsibility for the impact on the economy, while now he shares responsibility with the House and the Senate, and arguably his latest moves with respect to the executive orders have made the situation worse, not improved the situation at all. So let us stop sharing, or have I already stopped sharing? I think I may have already stopped sharing. Maybe I didn't. Let's see. Okay, so let's get to some of the impacts on the economy. One article from Common Dreams by Jessica Corbett on August 7th. This is a somewhat old article already because we're at the 11th now. But I haven't been on for a little, so. I do want to share this with you. So the headline is, analysis shows rapid and reckless the reopening is not only bad for public health, but for the economy too. And by the way, that's been found over in Europe too, in country after country, that those who chose to focus on the economy and did not aggressively manage COVID got neither good economic performance nor good COVID performance. That happened in country after country. It was especially notable for Sweden, but it was notable for other countries also that were not aggressive enough in responding to the virus, including the UK, which has a lot of deaths per million right now, somewhere 671 or something like that. Much worse than the United States up to this point, though, to be fair, we are gaining fast on the UK. An analysis published in Forbes this week, just ahead of Friday's federal jobs report, challenges the argument for many GOP politicians, including President Trump, that rapidly reopening business and loosening restrictions in the midst of the coronavirus is somehow good for the economy. Now, this is Forbes making an analysis. The United States continues to lead the world in COVID-19 cases and deaths, over 4.9 million, at least 160,737 respectively, as the crisis was officially declared a pandemic at the global level in March, and in the absence of serious mitigation actions from the Trump administration or Congress, many U.S. cities and states imposed stay-at-home orders to curb the spread of the virus. Stay-at-home orders again. The new analysis from The Economist and Forbes senior contributor Christian Weller compared states with longer stay-at-home orders that are gradually reopening, such as Massachusetts, New York, and Washington, with those like Florida, Georgia, and Texas, which have had shorter orders and aggressively reopened, quote unquote. The latter states have seen spikes in cases and in deaths. That is what's happening. All risk, no reward. Identifying the economic fallout from what? Oh, premature reopening. And that's someone, of course, cleaning the table at a restaurant, sanitizing it. The evidence suggests, however, that limited interventions to control the virus, including hasty reopenings or no stay-at-home orders, have resulted in resurgent virus outbreaks. These infection increases have led to widespread health emergencies and economic uncertainty. But can you remember when in late February, early March, I did a live stream that was partly on an article that appeared, I believe, in The Atlantic, where someone from the epidemiology department at Harvard said the worst scenario that one could have was getting into a cycle of the reopening too soon before the virus was under control, and then having a resurgence of the virus, and then having to close again and again, hastily reopening, and again and again and again. That is the cycle the United States, the various individual states in the United States are in right now. That was a scenario that was predicted back at the beginning, and we still haven't managed to cope with that particular scenario. We have fallen right into the trap, thanks largely to the leadership of this president. Rather than focusing on the health impacts of swiftly reopening, Weller looked at the share of residents who were missing or deferring rent or mortgage payments, lost earnings, employment, food insufficiency, and expectations about housing costs and future financial losses based on data from the U.S. Census Household Pulse Survey and Opportunity Insights, tracktherecovery.org. The new analysis, which added not only more weeks of data, but also information on whether or not people have jobs, provides more evidence that reopening quickly and risking public health does not come with economic benefits. It does not come with economic benefits. Weller explained, highlighting the rent and employment findings. And there it is. The additional weeks of data also allow for somewhat different analysis that illustrates these two different paths after reopening on a week-by-week basis. All states that had stay-at-home orders have been open for at least 5 weeks. The progress for states with cautious health measures versus risky ones looks remarkably different over those 5 weeks. Well, the second figure included in the report focuses only on the share of people working each week after local orders ended. The same pattern emerges for other indicators. A little over a month after opening up, states that aggressively forged ahead and put their people's lives at risk got an economic whimper rather than a bang. The Forbes report served as an update to a similar July 20th piece that Weller, at Center for American Progress, senior fellow and professor of public policy at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, co-authored with Ryan Zamaripa, CAP's associate director of economic policy. The key takeaways from the data Weller wrote for Forbes are clear. There's no way around it. Getting the economy back on track means controlling the pandemic. There are no shortcuts. Putting people's lives at risk and wishing the virus away are not going to produce a magic economic recovery, the economist argued. The second lesson from the data is that no state is an island. All state economies are connected with each other. No single state can forge its own path out of the pandemic. Because controlling the pandemic first is essential, it is then also clear the federal government needs to develop, implement, and sustain a national strategy to fight the pandemic. It also needs to lead on combating the economic fallout from the pandemic. We've been saying this from the beginning, haven't we? From the beginning, for months and months and months, the same thing. And the article basically says more about that. But that's basically the point. That's what is going on. That's what is happening to us. And that is what we must do in order to stop it. The argument in Forbes is only the latest time that such an argument has been made. So, and the article ends with Daniel Zhao, an economist from Glassdoor, saying, and with less than 3 months until the election, attention on the coming jobs report will likely heighten. Yes, it will likely heighten. On all the jobs reports, okay, that are coming, because the jobs reports have been getting a little better as time goes on, lulling people into thinking that, oh, things are getting better. But then COVID surges, and the jobs reports, no jobs reports are good compared to pre-COVID times, but they seem to be getting better. But now, again, things are resurging again or surging again, and it doesn't look like things are going to go very well. So let us look again. And here we go. Social Security, because of the executive order on Social Security, the issue has arisen. The funding for Social Security, Trump is threatening the funding for Social Security. And John Kelly writes on August 9th, in Common Dreams, vowing to defend retirees, Biden denounces, quote, new reckless war on Social Security, unquote, by Trump. And yes, there is Biden happy to defend the Social Security that he threatened to defund on 5 different occasions previously, right? But now, of course, it's politically advantageous to him. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has hit back against President Donald Trump's open threat on Saturday to permanently cut the payroll tax, which funds both Social Security and Medicare, 2 of the nation's most popular and vital safety net programs. Even as White House officials on Sunday did their best to walk back Trump's clear-as-day pronouncement that he permanently terminate the payroll tax if reelected in November, Biden, in a statement Saturday evening, said, "Make no mistake, Donald Trump said today that if he is reelected, he will defund Social Security." Is that what he said? Did he say he would defund Social Security? Or did he say he would permanently terminate the payroll tax if reelected in November? Does that mean he's going to defund Social Security? Does the payroll tax actually pay for Social Security? The answer is no. Congressional appropriations fund Social Security. Then the issue is, how do you get new reserves in the Treasury spending account in order for the Treasury to make the Social Security payments that are due? How do you do it? How do you do it? Okay. You don't have to do it by having a trust fund. That is not necessary. You can do it by having an automatic appropriation 1 year in advance of when the funds will have to be spent. You have that for one of the Medicare trust funds, the Part D trust fund. You could do it for Social Security trust funds too. In just the same way, you could appropriate the funds for it 1 year in advance. Then there would be no problem in paying for it. But Trump hasn't pronounced on that yet. He has not pronounced. But everybody's up in arms because he might terminate the payroll tax. He might. I don't trust him at all on Social Security. He might eliminate Social Security. He might privatize it for the sake of his cronies on Wall Street. Sure, there's no doubt that's going to happen. But terminating the payroll tax is not defunding Social Security per se. It is interfering with the mechanism that currently triggers the Federal Reserve to top up the Treasury spending account. But even then, that doesn't directly apply to the payroll tax, because if Congress appropriates the payroll tax, then the Treasury Department is going to have to pay for Social Security. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say if Congress appropriates payroll tax. I should say if Congress appropriates the Social Security payments in any given year, then the Treasury is going to have to find the money for that. It may have to be floating debt. It might have to use platinum coins. Congress might have to use overt congressional financing as part of the appropriations bill. All that is all right. But the point is, not having the payroll tax is not tantamount to defunding. What's tantamount to defunding is Congress failing to appropriate Social Security payments for a particular year. I got to say that, people. That's really it. I don't want to reinforce this myth that the payroll tax is funding Social Security. It is not. While Republicans have refused to budge from their demands to drastically diminish a far-reaching COVID-19 relief package by Democrats, Biden, in a statement, characterized Trump's announced executive orders on Saturday, which experts and critics have roundly rebuked as not only legally dubious, but wholly inadequate to the pandemic crisis at hand, as a series of half-baked measures. That much is true. I have two short takes, or relatively short takes anyway. One on the unemployment, the so-called executive order, which is a memorandum, and the other on the Social Security tax, so-called executive order, and they both are messes. They're both not going to work. I cover this in my two videos, so I urge you to take a look at them. As a series of half-baked measures that include a first shot in a new reckless war on Social Security and Medicare, and an order on jobless benefits that will do nothing, cuts, chaos, and confusion to our system of unemployment insurance. Well, it's not going to work, but I'm not sure that it's going to do all that. It's going to introduce confusion. Everybody's going to be thoroughly and totally confused because what's being done is not a part of our unemployment insurance system. Biden accused Trump of putting Social Security at grave risk at a time when seniors are suffering the overwhelming impact of a pandemic he's failed to get under control, and denounced the president's failed leadership from the first day of the pandemic through to the present. For months, Trump has golfed rather than but negotiated and sown division rather than pull people together to get a package passed. Biden is right about that. And then he says, quote, now, instead of staying in Washington and working with Republicans and Democrats to reach a bipartisan deal, President Trump is at his golf club in New Jersey signing a series of dubious executive orders, unquote. They're not dubious. They either won't work or it's even possible that one or more of them is unconstitutional. They won't work, for sure. Biden added, quote, this is no art of the deal. This is not presidential leadership. These orders are not real solutions. They're just another cynical ploy designed to deflect responsibility. Some measures do more harm than good. Social Security Works on Sunday applauded Biden for his promise to defend the program against an attack by Trump. Social Security Works said strong statement from Joe Biden on Donald Trump's plan to destroy Social Security if he is reelected. We don't know yet whether that's his plan to destroy Social Security. We know that his plan to destroy the payroll tax, apparently. As Common Dreams reported Sunday, progressives have offered detailed critiques and condemnation of each of the orders that, taken together, amount to nothing but a cruel joke and a sham solution, but presented to the American people. Well, that's very true. And Judd Legum, a very keen legal head who used to be one of the heads, move on, says Trump couldn't make a deal with Congress, so he decided to pretend he was a dictator, and the first thing he did was defund Social Security. Well, Judge, great as a legal person, but he's not a very good economist. Seniors pay for their housing, food, and medicine with their Social Security, putting $1 trillion into our economy every year, said Richard Fiesta, executive director of the Alliance for the Retired Americans. Older Americans have earned their benefits through a lifetime of work, and so on, and they should not be put at risk because President Trump is mad at Congress for not bending to his will. Yeah, on Social Security, because he wanted that Social Security tax cut and he couldn't get it. By the way, the Social Security tax cut in another kind of economy, even in the 2008 economy, a Social Security tax cut would have been very good because it would have had a primary multiplier of 1.35, and because that tax cut was actually one that would have been passed by Congress if the proposal had been accepted by the administration. There was a little bit of a payroll tax cut there, but also it was one accepted by Congress, legislated by Congress, so that there was no problem about the legality of the tax cut. But in the payroll tax cut that was advocated by the MMT economists, in 2008, it would have been both an employer and employee tax cuts. It would have put $650 a month in the hands of a couple making but $50,000 between them. And that money wouldn't have come out of the fund. In other words, there was an appropriation by Congress at the time to replace what would have been the tax money in the Social Security Trust Fund. Of course, there's no trust fund that contains any money in it. It's an accounting record, but the point being there was an appropriation that was made by Congress that allowed the Treasury Department to mark up the trust fund at Social Security for the same amount that would have come from a payroll tax. So that's the way this should have been done if Trump wanted a payroll tax cut. However, in the economy of 2008, that payroll tax cut would have had a primary multiplier of something like 1.35, and between primary, secondary, and tertiary multipliers, it probably would have actually produced $2 of GDP for every $1 of tax cut. So at that point, it was a good move because it would have put money in people's pockets very quickly. But at this point, many more people are unemployed and many fewer people are available to experience the payroll tax cut and quickly inject that into the economy. The multiplier effect wouldn't be anywhere near now what it was then. Nowhere near now, what it was then. Now there are better ways of getting money into people's hands, like the ABC Act, being sponsored by Pramila Jayapal and Rashida Tlaib. And that is one hell of an act and would put $2,000 a month into people's hands and would really help the economy tremendously. And of course, Trump is among those who doesn't want to go for that, as is his Republicans in the Senate, and Nancy Pelosi, for that matter, in the House as well, and most of the Democrats. There's a statement from Bernie Sanders here. No, Mr. President, we will not let you destroy Social Security. We will defeat you badly. And Nancy Altman, the president of Social Security Works, said the American people must ensure not only Trump held to account for what he has now threatened to do, voters should treat any senator or representative who was silent as complicit in destroying Social Security. Furthermore, every American who cares about Social Security's future must do everything they can to ensure that Trump does not get a second term. Well, I entirely agree on all of that. No question about it. Okay, so while the economy is being hit hard, one of the remedies that Trump wants to put in for it is to put his executive order, which is not really a payroll tax cut, it's a payroll tax deferral. A payroll tax deferral. And I made that very, very clear in my relatively short video on that executive order. And I pointed out why things would be such a mess in the implementation of the executive order. And to more briefly go into it here, one thing that would happen is that how would the money actually get into people's pockets? There's no law passed by Congress. It's a payroll tax deferral for 4 months. Nobody knows what's going to happen after those 4 months. Now, the Trump executive order says the Secretary of the Treasury will seek to have the payroll tax deferral actually become a payroll tax cuts by getting the Congress to forgive the tax, okay, essentially. But nobody knows if that's what happened. As far as anybody knows, come January 1st, those taxes would be due. If one person was had each month $350 a month taken out of their pay for Social Security withholding, okay, over 4 months, that would amount to $1,400 in taxes that would be deferred. They would owe those taxes on January 1st. In that situation, what will the employees favor doing and what will the employers favor doing? The employers here are acting as tax collection agents for the federal government through their withholding. They're going to want those taxes to be there. It will be their duty, in the absence of congressional action, it will be their duty to still collect those taxes. It doesn't matter what the intent of the administration is here. The people will be responsible for those taxes. The business will be responsible for its matching funds corresponding to those taxes. The employers will be responsible. They're not going to want to discontinue withholding. Most of them, in my view, are not going to do it. They're going to continue to take that money out of people's pay. They'll put it in an escrow account. And when the tax deferral period is over, they'll pay it to the federal government. The first part in January. What's the alternative? The alternative is that they would have to take it all at once out of their pay of their employees when the taxes fell due in January, because there would be no more withholding deferment in January. There's no certainty of that. It's not in place. You have to assume that Trump would win and would do a further deferral. Even then, I don't think he can do a deferral of 2020 taxes in 2021. I think the tax law says those 2020 taxes have to be withheld in 2020, because as of January 2021, they are owed. The taxpayers are on the hook at that point. Even if Trump should win the presidency, there's no guarantee he'd get a Congress. If Democrats still have control of the House, there's no guarantee that he could get the House to go along with forgiving that tax cut, even if the Senate would support him. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know that. So let's look at Trump's executive action on unemployment insurance, which deliberately leaves out the poorest of Americans. Trump really has it in for the poor. Let's face it, folks. He just wants the poor to die. This article is by Jake Johnson. It was yesterday. Experts warn Trump executive action on unemployment insurance by deliberately leaves out the poorest Americans. Let's see what Jake has to say. On top of serious questions about the directive's legality and workability, experts are warning that President Donald Trump's executive action to extend the federal unemployment insurance boost at $400 a week using $44 billion in funds meant for disaster relief leaves out the poorest Americans by design. This was one problem with it, of course, but this doesn't speak to the workability of it in terms of those people it does cover. The language of Trump's unemployment memorandum issued over the weekend defines eligible claimants as those receiving at least $100 per week, quote unquote, in state unemployment benefits, meaning that laid-off workers currently receiving less than $100 per week in aid will not see $1 in federal relief unless states agree to increase their benefits. So the poorest people, who are not entitled to very much in benefits because their wages to begin with are so little, won't get any benefits out of this. This is horrendous. That means those at the bottom of the income distribution, a quote from the Washington Post, particularly workers who rely on tips and the self-employed, could see no additional federal benefit at all. He hates waiters and waitresses in restaurants. Could see no additional federal benefit at all, said Andy Statner. The Post, Jeff Stein, noted that one estimate suggests Trump's unilateral unemployment boost will block payments from going to 10 to 15% of the lowest earning UI recipients. And Jason Bailey, executive director of the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, tweeted, "This plan is asking laid-off Kentucky workers to somehow live on as little as $39 a week." Trump's directive calls for a $400 a week boost, which is, by the way, the significant cut to the previous $600 level people were getting. But as analysts hasten to point out, Trump's plan would require states to kick in 25%, $100 of the $400 total. States aren't going to be able to do that. They don't have the $100 a week. They have not planned for it. This is a sudden change by Trump. They have allocated the money to other things, like keeping people employed who are already working for them. Where are they going to find that $100 a week for their unemployed, for millions of unemployed? If they take it away from people already working for them, those people will be unemployed. And there will be that many more people for the unemployment programs to handle. Their need to get that $100 will create more unemployed. Quote, it's a difficult proposition for states to implement in a short period of time, said Stetner. States had already struggled to get unemployment money in the hands of out-of-work Americans. This will disappoint workers. They think they'll get that $400 next week, but they're not. No. Okay. And Lee Greenberg said, literally every new detail about these executive orders confirms that in addition to being wildly unconstitutional, they will do absolutely nothing to help anyone who's suffering. This is what happens when the president cares about posturing for an election, but not about people. Yes, this is what happens when that happens. And Rebecca Dixon, who's the National Employment Law Project executive director, states that the most sophisticated systems may be able to stand up to this program eventually, but those states have been faltering due to decades of neglect or outright sabotage will be less likely to see any of this money. That's, by the way, Trump states. Those are red states that have been faltering to the decades of neglect or outright sabotage. They're not going to be able to take advantage of this program. Quote, this is not a serious approach to solving a very serious problem, unquote, she said of the president's executive action. We urge the administration to get back to real negotiations with Congress on a comprehensive and operable approach that will ensure that people have the resources they need to survive for the duration of this crisis. This is not going to work. Very few states are going to take the president up on his offer, and gnash his teeth as he might. He is not going to be able to get that extra $100. And it's not just $100. He's not going to be able to get that extra 25%. If he changes the memo to ask for a $300 a week boost, then what will happen is that 25% of the $300 a week boost would have to be supplied by the states, and they still wouldn't have that. The problem with his plan is that his memorandum goes through the FEMA program, and the FEMA program requires state cost sharing at 25%, and that's specified by law. And the president himself cannot redo the law. He doesn't have that authority. Now, he may have the authority because he declared this as a national emergency to give orders to FEMA to view this as a natural disaster, and therefore to give people $300 a week, okay, in benefits, as long as the states that have to implement this program with FEMA would kick in the other 25%. But if they won't do it, he's dead in the water. These unemployment benefits are not going to get to people in the states. They're going to be totally disappointed. It isn't going to work. It isn't going to work. It isn't going to work. I don't know if it's unconstitutional. I personally think that it probably is constitutional, especially with this court. But I also think it's impractical. The states are not going to reply. They're not going to help Trump. They're not going to bail him out on this. He should have been leading the Republicans to make a settlement with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. He shouldn't have been sitting around playing golf and saying a bunch of crap, which is what he usually does. Okay, so let's look briefly at what but Dave Dayen had to say about this in his column, okay, of yesterday, which was another excellent column by David. He really killed it. And Dave said, Trump orders up a poor substitute for COVID. And let me make sure that I'm sharing this for you. Thanks for sharing. We have more folks here now. That's good. There we go. I got 2 instances of this, it turns out. So it is shared now. Of course, you're seeing ads. Dave says, Trump orders up a poor substitute for COVID relief. It is a poor substitute. He wasn't able to deliver on a good substitute because he refused to negotiate with the Congress. He refused to negotiate. He refused to get the Republicans and Democrats, okay, to negotiate all in the same room. Instead, he sent his people from the White House to negotiate directly with Nancy Pelosi. And he bypassed Mitch McConnell. There were no guarantees from Mitch McConnell that anything that was accepted by the White House and by Nancy Pelosi would be accepted by McConnell's caucus, or enough of McConnell's caucus to get this through the Senate. So the White House could not guarantee that Mitch McConnell was going to go along, or enough senators, okay, were going to go along. So why would the Democrats, why would they make a deal with the White House only to have the Senate unmake that particular deal? They would lose whatever negotiating leverage they had. All the parties to negotiation had to be there, and Trump had to be bunking heads, and he had to agree. And one of the things he was going to have to agree to, which he didn't want to agree to, was that his pet project of a payroll tax cut was going to have to go by the board in favor of some of the other alternatives. Anyway, what Dave says is, after weeks of unproductive talks with Democrats bending, but the White House unyielding, over the weekend, Donald Trump issued 3 memoranda and an executive order that at this moment reflect the only additional relief to the American people at a time when fiscal policy was the only thing preventing the economy from ruin. He says, we'll get to what's in these in a minute, but it's worth noting that what's not there, the HEROES Act, House Democrats' kitchen sink policy, because they threw everything but the kitchen sink in it, added up to $3.4 trillion. But they didn't throw the really good stuff in it, like the Jayapal bill for nationalizing payroll and the Tlaib Jayapal bill, the Automatic Boost to Communities Act. That was the really good stuff. They didn't throw that into the kitchen sink. Why? Because they never listened to progressives. They never listened to the progressives. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, who get the vapors, that's the Peterson organization, the Peterson-spawned organization, who get the vapors at the site of a deficit, so they ought to know, the Trump orders would provide at least $225 billion in near-term funds, and on net, just $13 billion, tops in new budgetary outlays. Yeah, that's all. The $225 billion in near-term funds, that was the illusion. Okay, the illusion. Okay, that was what people were going to have to pay back later. So on net, there was only $13 billion tops in new budgetary outlays. Everything in the orders are the shuffles existing money around or kicks payments down the road. The new spending just assumes some missed collections. And Dave says, I've read all four documents here, but that is the one on unemployment, the one on the payroll tax cut, the one on extending the moratorium for federal housing, and the one on student loans, okay, extending the period of forgiveness of student loan payments with no additional interest. By the way, that's the only real thing in there. It's the only real thing in there. That's all. I mean, everything else is BS and stage managed. Okay. I've read all four documents, and I would say that CRFB, that's the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, is being amazingly generous, assuming that anything close to even the meager funding it outlines will actually materialize. So let us drive in. And Dave talks about what I just talked about, the unemployment, that particular measure, the 300 and the 100, essentially extra week, okay, retroactive, going back to August 1st. Using relief funds appropriated in the CARES Act. However, most of that CARES Act money is already spoken for. Trump claims there's more of it non-spoken for than has already been spoken for. And cash-strapped states don't have a lot of extra money available to contribute. So I say it's unlikely the state share will be included in a majority of states. But if the state share is not included, the 300 can't be forthcoming. That would be a violation of law at that point. Unemployed workers themselves will get half of what they previously got. No, they won't get half of what they previously got because Trump doesn't have the authority to allocate the $300 from FEMA unless that $100 from the states is forthcoming. In addition, there's only $44 billion available from the FEMA fund for the federal share. About $50 billion was spent on the $600 enhancement in the first 2 weeks of July, with nearly 30 million people receiving benefits. This is half that, and maybe fewer recipients as hiring increases. No, hiring is not going to increase now. I think it's going to turn the other way again. But at most, this gets you another 5 weeks of support. By the end of August, it'll be done, even though it's supposed to last until December. That's right. By the end of August, it'll be nearly done. It can't last until September. That's just window dressing. He knows it can't last till September. I'm sure Mnuchin told him, and Mnuchin knows. He's really got his fingers on the dollars. He's from Goldman. They keep their fingers on the dollars. Now, when recipients will actually get anything is unclear. States would have to create an entirely new program through their antiquated unemployment insurance programs. It's first come, first served, so early states might get a little more for their residents, while states that take months to figure things out would be shut out at the window entirely. And while the unemployed endure the wait, rent and other bills are still due. Besides all that, it's plainly unconstitutional, as David Super explains. Okay, the disaster relief program being used isn't intended for this purpose, and its ability to deliver unemployment benefits is severely limited. Violating the Anti-Deficiency Act, which this does, carries criminal penalties. But while many will grumble, who exactly will sue to block the unemployed from getting even meager benefits? But Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, I've got my antivirus thing giving me a little trouble right now. Violating the Anti-Deficiency Act, which this does, carries penalties, but while many will grumble, who exactly will sue to block the unemployed from getting even meager benefits? I don't know. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin taunted Democrats with exactly this rationale on Sunday. That doesn't deal with my objection, specifically that many states are not going to come up with $100. If the $100 is not forthcoming, the $300 a week can't be forthcoming either. But that's what I think. And I think that Trump knows if he does that, he goes too far. In fact, well, now David Super says it's plainly unconstitutional. I don't know why David Super said it was unconstitutional. Let me see if I can quickly find out. States have already allocated three quarters of the CRF. This means they've committed those funds. Treasury's data cover less than half the time that states have to spend the CRF. Treasury's confusing guidance has hampered the CRF recipients. He has a lot of significant objections here, but I don't see anything on the unconstitutionality. Do you? I see objections based on the unworkability, and I think that's certainly, those are certainly decisive against this. Oh, this is by Micah Leachman. Oh, this is not by Super. I guess the link that was supplied by Dave here is incorrect, unless I clicked on the wrong thing. No, I must have clicked on the wrong thing. Let me do it again. No? Maybe it's on this page, but I haven't scrolled down enough. Nope. This seems to be the wrong article. So, the link is broken. So I don't know why David Super says that. I'll have to Google that later and check that out. The disaster relief program being used isn't intended for this purpose, and its ability to deliver unemployment benefits is severely limited. I think Trump has an argument. It was in the memorandum. It ties in the declaration of a national emergency, and FEMA's purpose is to give people money in case, of emergencies. Like essentially natural disasters. COVID, arguably, is a natural disaster. I think Trump might actually get away with the constitutionality of that. Okay. So going to payroll taxes, Dave covers the payroll taxes here. Any worker making less than $104,000 per year would have payroll taxes deferred from September 1st to the end of the year. They'll still owe the taxes, they just won't have to pay them until January. This is a bureaucratic nightmare for employers, many of whom will likely opt to either keep paying them or put them in an escrow account. I completely agree with that. Otherwise, they have to garnish a worker's entire paycheck in January to cover back payroll taxes. My expectation is that this has next to no stimulative effect at all. Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely. It's just not going to be done. Trump says he wants to terminate these taxes, but he needs Congress to agree. It's a political ploy to bribe the electorate, says Dave. That might be it. But if businesses just hang on to the money to avoid the future fallout, it won't even work as a bribe because it'll never get into the workers' pockets. Democrats are screaming that these taxes fund Social Security and Medicare, and canceling them would hasten a crisis. Of course, Congress could just, fund Social Security and Medicare, and crisis solved. Yes, crisis solved. But what is Congress's incentive to bail Trump's chestnuts out of the fire. Evictions. This is just vaporware. The order just says that health officials should consider an eviction ban. That's what I thought too. That the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Treasury Department, should see what they can do about helping renters and mortgage borrowers with funds to stay in their homes. That's it. The federal moratorium only covered a handful of cases anyway. This is more useless than that. Dave's absolutely on the money there. And student loans. Of the four orders, this is the most useful as it extends an existing forbearance for federal student loans. Again, borrowers would still owe the money eventually, but it's somewhat useful to relieve the burden now. What this shows, though, is that the Education Department has a lot of discretion to let these loans go uncollected indefinitely if they choose, to say nothing of the authority to cancel student loans. Trump is proving the concept. He is. I mean, that's a great point by Dave. Trump is proving the concept to all that if the Education Department wants to, it can cancel the student loans. Now, it is said that the federal government now owns 80% of the student loans. So the executive branch has the authority to cancel 80% of the student loans. Do you think that if Bernie Sanders was the nominee of the Democratic Party now, and he was in line to be elected against Trump, do you think he wouldn't cancel the student loans on the day he was elected? He very well might, right? 80% of them anyway. And then he'd try to get legislation for the rest. This appears to be the sum total of relief, with no talk scheduled for a broader bill. So will there be another stimulus check as it stands now? No. Money for state and local governments on the brink of firing millions due to an inability to cover staggering drops in revenue? No. Postal Service funding? That's out. Elections? Nope. Small business support? The PPP expired over the weekend? Sorry. Increases to food stamps and money for schools to safely educate and testing? And you get the picture. On a macroeconomic level, this dramatically snaps back the fiscal support carried out over the past 5 months. It will undoubtedly push an economy with double-digit unemployment deep into a spiral. By the way, for retirees who are couples, 2 retirees still alive, needing a little bit of extra money, Trump, by failing to negotiate and coming to agreement with the other 2 parties, within negotiation, has just cost us, for the time being, $2,400. Retired persons, how do you like those apples? No 2,400 checks, no 2,400 bucks, no 2 stimulus checks at $1,200 apiece. Still going to vote for Trump? In the retiree group, Joe Biden had a 2-point lead as of this morning. Why not a 12-point lead? Trump just cost us $2,400. Why not a 12-point lead? Come on, that's worth at least another 10 points, isn't it? Anyway, I'll go on. Increases to food stamps and money for schools to safely educate and testing, and you get the picture. On a macroeconomic level, this dramatically snaps back the fiscal support carried out over the past 5 months and will undoubtedly push an economy with double-digit unemployment deep into a spiral. He's absolutely right. That's exactly what's going to happen. And that's why, well, let me go through the rest of this. This is all foreseeable and foreseen. I don't want to turn this into an I told you so situation. But since March, I've consistently stated that the temporary CARES Act measures for individuals and small business would prove insufficient, that a second bite of the apple would be unlikely after Republicans got the corporate bailout they desired. On April 27th, Speaker Pelosi told Jake Tapper to, quote, just calm down, unquote, when asked if she made a tactical error to not seek broader state and local fiscal aid in the CARES Act. Quote, we will have state and local, and we will have it in a very significant way, unquote, she sniffed. Yesterday, on the same network, she said she's praying for a resumption of talks. Shahed Buttar, note, malpractice on the part of Pelosi, costing her constituents a lot of money because she didn't bargain tough. She did not bargain tough in March when she should have, when she got help to get the CARES Act passed. She gave them too much without getting anything corresponding on the other side. She stunk at bargaining. Stunk. It was a great error, says Dave, to hold off on critical priorities until the next bill. After all, the leverage was squandered. These Pelosi hagiographies are embarrassing in the context of her blowing the chance to secure ongoing relief throughout the pandemic. Whoever replaces Pelosi when she leaves doesn't have to repeat these mistakes as long as they learn from them. I was on Democracy Now! Today talking about these orders as well as the war on the Postal Service, and you can watch that on their website, says Dave. So, here we go. What's happening, at this point? What is the likely projection concerning what's going to happen to the polls and what's going to happen to the vote over the next 3 months? Over the next less than 3 months. It's less than 3 months now. Well, we are now still on the wrong side of increases in fatalities relative to COVID, with governors likely to be shutting down state economies again, increasingly as we go forward, as the death toll mounts. We have a projection from the University of Washington that we're going to go up to 300,000 fatalities. We have a Trump administration that is still not doing anything about this. We have an economy that's on the verge of collapse because no further relief has been forthcoming, and because of the malpractice committed by the Republicans and by Nancy Pelosi from March until now. The economy is on its way to tanking again. It's not on its way up. We have two determining factors of the polling and two determining factors of the vote. We have the trends with COVID getting worse. We have the trends in the economy getting worse. I tell you that the current expectations or projections that the gap is going to narrow between Trump and Biden are unrealistic. What is going to happen, given these two basic driving factors, is that the gap between Trump and Biden is going to broaden, despite the horrible choice Biden just made to get Harris on the ticket. Harris is something that will cost them votes, but maybe not electoral votes. Maybe not electoral votes. Okay, but why not electoral votes? Because most progressives at this point know that it's easier to fight with Biden and Harris and their people than it is to fight with Trump and his people. it's easier to make a political fight. So we're going to choose that by seeing to it that Biden-Harris win in swing states where the vote is close. Where the vote is not close, as measured by the polls, where it looks like Biden is going to have a margin of more than 10 points, more than 15 points, more than 20 points, we will feel free to vote for third parties in those states. We will vote to build another party so we are not forced again into coming aboard the Democratic Party horror show. There will be a third party built this time, and we will try to make it stronger and stronger for 2024 so that there's a real choice. There's a real choice for us at that time. But in the meantime, we will do what's necessary to get Trump out of the picture. But the popular vote won't be anywhere near what it otherwise would have been if Silly Joe had nominated Karen Bass, or even better, Bernie Sanders for vice president. This guy is just a disgrace. I'm now talking about Joe Biden. He does everything wrong. Everywhere along the way. He didn't do a thing right. He was put in by Jem Clyburn, and Obama, Barack Obama. They put him in there. He never would have made it, except for what they did. He didn't do anything right. And he's not doing anything right yet. Okay, that's my shtick for tonight. I will now move over to consider your comments. I see my daughter has messaged me. Let me, for a moment, before I get into the comments, let me share the screen again. And show the promo to remind you of my Patreon account, which is patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. And now I will go to your comments. Okay, so let me go back to the beginning and take them in order, as I usually do. Okay, says, I wonder if the results will be in tonight. Carmen says, welcome. Carmen says, I'm 38 and I have a wisdom tooth trying to cut on the top left. Is that normal? I don't know. I don't know much about wisdom teeth. I am lucky that I have never had any problem with mine. However, my mother had a hell of a time with her wisdom teeth. Boy, it was awful. Carmen says, COVID has me petrified to go out. Well, if you're 38, you're still in a lower risk group. but it is petrifying. There's no question about it. Certainly go out, okay, with good masks. Very good mask, okay, is important. We go out both with surgical masks, but also uh, with the face shields to stop the airborne stuff. Kay says, we are now next to the worst place to raise a child. S-hole country. God. Carbon says, the college player told Trump about himself over his mishandling of COVID. Carmen says, oh, fascist book took the care emoji away. Stephen DeVore says, hi, everyone. Sandy says, hi, Stephen. States will end up paying more in fatalities and orphan children resulting from parents that had to die for the Dow. Yeah, probably true. Sad. Hi, Sandy. Kay says, I know Kamala backed one of Bernie's medical bills in the Senate. Yes, but then she ran away from it as fast as she could when she got into the debates, and her donors had told her, that's a no-no, Kamala, that's a no-no. No backing Medicare for all. We don't need Medicare for all. And Carmen says, she doesn't mean it, just another pandering pants, and probably but trying to find a hopeful side. Sorry, we don't need hopeful sides right now. What we need is the opposite. We need to get down, we need to get on her, and we need to get on Biden, and we need to be unrelenting until they produce. It's not about hope, it's about their producing. Steve DeVore says, I'm hostile about him, and nobody understands why I am, and I can't take the time to tap it out on my phone each and every time. Sandy says, she all hugs and kisses with the mad sniffer. Kay says, maybe she'll be smart enough to see that everybody backs Medicare for all. And Steve says, they are spurning progressives completely by picking Harris. It was a fuck you to progressives. We love our neoliberal life. It was, or as I phrased it in my video on it, it was another thumb stuck right in our collective eyes. And Steve says, burning, not perning. Carmen says, he loves the stench of tokenism. It's especially intoxicating to the senile dolt. Sandy says, she's playing the game, quote, I'll tell you what you want to hear till I get what I want, unquote. After that, she'll forget all about it, just like her rant at Joe during the debate. Absolutely, Sandy. I posted on my page a really good video with Stephanie Kelton and RP talking on how to make the economy work for us. Okay, it's about an hour. How new is that video, Stephen? Is it old? Is it recent? But please let me know and post the link here if you would. Lana Dell says, I want to know how much insurance lobby dollars has gone to Kamala. That will determine how hard she pushes for Medicare for all. Well, remember, it's going to be based on how much insurance lobby dollars has gone to the Biden-Harris ticket. That's what's going to determine things now. You can bet your bottom dollar there's a lot of insurance lobby dollars going to Biden and Kamala right now. Sandy says Biden lies like a rug. He lies like a cheap rug. And Kay says, good point, Lana. Carmen says the teachers are at least seeing the state to contest opening schools because they're fearing for their own lives and their children's. But Death Santis ain't hearing it, taking orders straight from Herr Fuhrer. Carmen says, suing, not seeing. Figured. Lana says, I have argued with so many stupid people about SS funding the last few days. I can't stand it. Very tired. Yeah, they don't understand it. They don't understand it. It's hard to explain it. I keep trying. As a matter of fact, in my video last night, I was trying again, right? Gina Marie says, lots. I'm sure Anthem Pack bought her stupid position in healthcare. I suspect so. Stephanie said, sorry I'm late. Hey, Stephanie, nice to see you. And Sandy says, the school I work at plans to open. I am praying Murphy changes his mind. And Lana says, exactly, Gina. Sandy says, hi. Stephanie, Stephen says, I won't see M4A in my lifetime with Harris as VP. The two of them are a neoliberal wet dream, and like all neolibs, they tell you one thing and do another. Kay says, hi, Evelina. The worst part is that Bernie is going along with SSD funding BS narrative. Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed he was not only going along with that narrative, he was adding to the narrative. He was tweeting in support of Social Security works. Bernie is falling back into old patterns. Evelina says, hi, Kay. Sandy says, hi, Evelina. I think Bernie's despairing of educating people anymore. Okay. Richard Tipton said, what if there was a way to put back Social Security without people paying for it? There is. See my video of last night on how see my video on a way of adding money to the Treasury spending account called overt congressional financing. There is a way. It's called overt congressional financing. Look up that video. It's on my Facebook page. It's on my YouTube page. Okay, Richard Tipton. Look at that. Steve DeVore says, Congress can fund Social Security forever. It's a political question, not an economic one. And for all appearances, austerity is going to be around for a long time, and it's only going to get worse. Get your yellow vests ordered. It may get worse because they're continuing to spread the lies. But we have more people who know that there isn't any problem in funding it forever now. More people than we ever had before. We just have to keep talking. We have to keep spreading the news. We have to keep on spreading the truth. People will come around. We have a lot more people today. We have now thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people who know better. When I first started on this journey back in 2010, maybe there were a few hundred people, like 500 people who knew about this, who really knew about it. It was that small a group, okay, back then. It was enough to sustain some blogs, okay, but that's all. But we've been writing and we've been speaking continuously for the last 10 years. And now there are many thousands of people, and there are journalists who've picked up on it. But Dave Dayen knows about it. Ryan Graham knows about it. Zach Carter knows about it. Matt Stoller knows about it. Many people in journalism now know about it. Many more economists now know about it and more or less accept in any case one of the central ideas, which is that if the government wants to fund Social Security, the Congress can fund it by appropriating the frickin' funds. Stephanie said shared, but got put in FB jail. I'm sorry to hear it, Steph. And Richard Tipton says, I don't know what he prefers to be called, make every foreign company has a positive gain on the American Stock Exchange, pay 3% of the profit to Social Security and to disability. Not necessary, but I'm not opposed to levying a tax on foreign companies that are on the American Stock Exchange, but we don't need that to pay for Social Security, okay, and disability. It doesn't help us to tax for that particular purpose. Okay? It doesn't help us at all. All it does is feed the myth that taxes pay for Treasury spending. They do not. And Lana Dell says 2% by Obama. But yes, it was appropriated by Congress, and no one's benefits were cut because of it. I forgot, Lana. Thank you for reminding me that it was 2%. Okay, and Lana says it was approved by Congress. It was appropriated by Congress. The tax cut was passed by Congress. I think it was part of the ARRA. Carmen says, groups, I shared to 3 groups not too long ago. Into Fascist Book I went just for 3 groups. Sandy says, there's a group that we're all sharing to that has gotten mad about the repeat posting, but I am not sure which one it is. Carmen says, oops, I left out jail. And yeah, right. I mentioned that.
Okay.
Right. Bonnie just passed me a note, but I already mentioned it. AOC had a live stream earlier and suggested people put aside the funds that aren't taken out because they will have to pay later. Yes, but what happens if they're not able to put aside those funds? That's what withholding is for, to ensure that people put aside the funds they will have to pay later. That's what it's for. It's better if the employers keep on collecting those funds and holding them in escrow. It's better for all concerned. Sandy says, hi, Margot. Margot says, hi, Sandy. I'm sorry to be so late. My naps are interfering. Glad to be here, though. Glad you're here, Margot. Okay, Lana says, as of 8:40, Omar 56.9, and Antone 39.9, and John Mason 1.5%. With what percent of the precincts in, Lana? What percent of precincts are in? Sandy says, I'm sure the poor feel the same way about him. Evelina says that many Republicans are poor too, though. Yes, they are. And Kay says, a little bit of good news. May it continue. And Sandy says, Trump wants indentured servants. Yes, I'm sure he does. He wants slaves. Those down ballot progressive wins are the important ones, in my opinion. Right now, they are really important. Really, really are, because those are what's going to be important in fighting Trump. And in building the nucleus of a new party, because if a new party gets going, and a new party is really progressive, and it starts winning some down ballot seats, okay, for the new party, and the progressives in the Democratic Party become dissatisfied, they could desert en bloc to the new party and overnight add maybe 20 congresspeople to the new party. But of course, the new party has to have some success. Sandy says maybe they will wake up before the election. Evelina says, Sandy Degg, don't think they like Kamala, though. Evelina says, doubt they'd be ready to switch to Democrats. Carmen says, I love this program because I always leave important links for broken chains. Margot says, I think she's talking down ballot. Evelina says, how poetic of you, Carmen. And Margot Shepard says, Evelina says to Margot Shepard, then yes, thank you. Deborah says, oh no, Sandy. But Deborah Wilson says to Sandy, oh no, Sandy. And Sandy Degg says, perhaps they will go green, but doubtful. Perhaps they will get lucky and they will all stay home on election day. And Sandy says, hi, Deborah. And Deborah says, before I retired, I worked in a school too. Deborah says, hi. Stephen says, I think Trump's screwing all this stuff up, so when the election comes, he can boast, I'm the only one who can fix this, and his sycophants will fall in line and take the election again. I hope enough of the Republicans and independents got sick of Trump's crap and vote for whomever, probably Biden and Harris, but I hope Trump dries up and withers quietly in the wind. I hope he goes to jail. Kay says, Deborah, lucky you already retired before this mess. Sandy says, I may retire early. It's not worth getting sick or infecting, my elderly mom. Yeah, that's got to be a consideration for many people right now. Sandy says, hi, Dale. I guess that's Dale Weaver, probably. Deborah Wilson says, right, Kay, I'm only 57, but I married well. I've been retired for 5 years. Evelina says, you're okay with the Kamala? Sandy says, I doubt it will be quietly. He's a giant gas bag. Sandy says, has equals gas. Sandy says, or ass hat. Kay says, the whole mess is confusing to me, so I can't imagine what it must be for those who don't really follow politics much. I laugh out loud. Susan says, so we're going to get a big tax bill in January? How stupid. Well, if your payroll taxes keep getting withheld by your employer, and the bill doesn't say that it's mandatory to defer the withholding, I didn't see that. It says that I shouldn't call it a bill, okay, it's a memorandum. It says to make the deferral of withholding available. What that means is not clear. Is it supposed to be available to the business owners? Is it supposed to be available to the employers? That's not explicit in the executive order. If it's not explicit in the executive order, there may be guidance from the secretary, but that guidance doesn't have the force of law, not even the force of law that the executive order has. Does Dayan understand MMT? He understands MMT enough to know that the government can just pay for Social Security if it wants to pay for Social Security. He knows that. He has said enough in various columns that it's quite clear he's reflecting MMT perspectives. And the whole group of people he runs with, including Ryan Grimm and Matt Stoller, they all understand MMT. I think Zach Carter understands it pretty damn well. And Matt Stoller, I believe, for some time was sharing an office with Stephanie Kelton, that is. Kay says, it makes me understand why so many folks gave up on politics decades ago. Shake my head. Sandy says, Bernie would cancel the loans. Yeah. Susan says, Joe, who are you voting for? I'm probably going to vote third party. I don't think it's going to be close, in this state. If it is close, in this state, if it looks close, then I am definitely going to go for Biden, and Harris. And the reason why is we are near to fascism with this guy. If we have another 4 years of him, we take far too much of a chance that we have a full-blown fascist state and that we will never get rid of him. We have to get rid of him now. We'll have a difficult situation with Biden and Harris. No problem. But they'll be starting at the beginning, and they're going to have to roll back a lot of the damage that he did, because that's going to be expected of them. And that means we'll be much further from having a fascist state then. At most, It will be an inverted totalitarian system. That we can fight. Kay says, smart seniors don't trust Biden, but will vote for him to get rid of the orange idiot. Yep. Sandy says, it's a giant shit show. And Kay says, markets were down today in spite of the Fed shoveling money into it. Sure, they're down. They know that there's been no deal. They know the orders are bullshit, the executive orders, the memoranda, 3 memoranda, one executive order. They know those are bullshit. They know they're not going to heal the economy. The market's going to be down a lot, until they make a deal. Kay says, trying to clean out my bank accounts to get back onto Medicaid, but if the banks crash, it might be good to have cash on hand. Anyway, whatever happens, the banks will be functioning. Even if the banks were allowed to fail somehow by the Congress, they would still be functioning. They would just be resolved, and they would open up the Monday after for business. Your cash would be safe. You're not going to lose your cash, in the banks, unless you have an awful lot of cash. The FDIC still stands behind the cash in your accounts. Susan Aubrey Wild, yes, Sandy Degg. Your bank is insured by the FDIC. Susan Eldred said Harris will be running in 2024. I know she will be. And yes, Wall Street is thrilled with the Harris ticket. Yes, the Biden-Harris ticket is the Wall Street ticket. Even more than Trump, it's the Wall Street ticket. I mean, Trump has a lot of rich people, billionaires in his cabinet. He's always had them. But the Wall Street person, the real Wall Street person there, is the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. I mean, Biden is going to have Wall Street people strewn throughout his administration. Biden-Harris are the Wall Street tickets. By nominating Harris, what Biden did was open up a pathway of attack, because Trump will be able to refer to them as the Wall Street ticket from here until doomsday. And he'll be right. That's what they are. Kay says, Sandy, I don't trust any of it anymore. Sandy says, I don't blame you. Sorry, I scrolled down a little too far. I got to find my place again. Jane says, I don't blame you. Things are so screwy. Susan Aubrey Wild says, you're so right. After this election, we're gone from the DNC. By the way, Susan Aubrey Wild, welcome to the In-Depth Show. I don't believe I've seen you here before, so welcome. You're very welcome. And Susan says, you're so right. After this election, we're gone from DNC. And Dolores Pierce says, Green Party 2020. Well, maybe the People's Party 2020. Let's see what the Movement for a People's Party does at their Milwaukee convention. They may actually found the People's Party or a People's Party. Kay says, exactly, they do whatever they want to these days. And Lana says, what does Lana say? As of 9:24 Central, Omar 57.4%, Antone 39.3%, and Mason 1.5%. With what percent of the precincts in? And Dolores Pierce has an emoji that I can't see here. Susan Eldred says, Ilhan Omar won. That is wonderful news. Sandy Degg says, yay. Lana says, it looks good for Ilhan at 10:28. And Lana Dell says, are we watching other races? The Georgia 14th, the Connecticut 2nd, the Minnesota 7th, or Wisconsin 3rd? Those results came up too. I don't know. I think we may be watching the Georgia 14th. And Kay says, who are the winners? But Kamala was on at CNN Town Hall saying she was passionate about that. We need we need a Medicare for all bill, and the very next day she didn't mean to say that. Yeah, no. Georgia's 14th winner, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, what party is she with, Lana? Kay says, okay, is that a progressive win? Okay, the Connecticut second is very close, but Justin Anderson is up about 100 points. Lana says, I don't know these people. I'm wondering, okay, if anyone knows them. I don't. I haven't been keeping close track of the Connecticut. Haven't been keeping close track. Haven't been tracking the Georgia 14th. Kay says, are they all progressive? And Lana says the Minnesota 7th. There's Michelle Fischbach, 59%. Okay, and Lana says, I don't know if they're progressive. Well, we'll look it up. And in the Wisconsin 3rd, Derek Van Orden, 64%. And Kay says, the progressives are the only ones we need. Well, there are degrees, though, of being progressive. We have to look up at the platforms of these people and see what they're for. Susan says, Bernie needs to tell the truth about MMT. He's got nothing to lose, and his supporters would listen to him. He still has something to lose, and that is the chairpersonship of the Budget Committee. He really wants that. That's a position of power. Once he gets that, he'll have more freedom. It'll be hard to displace him. And he's still in line for that. Lana says, maybe someone can look these people up. I'm still working. And Lana says, Bernie is going backwards at this point with his stance. Forget about him talking about MMT. Maybe so. Kay says, Bernie knows, but no one would know about it anyway, probably. Yeah, at this point, Bernie is doing more harm than good. Not sure why he chooses to go in this direction. I don't know if I agree with that, Susan. He's supporting the down ballot progressives, and he's working hard on this. And a lot of the progressives that he's supporting down ballot do know about MMT. Cori Bush, for example, knows about MMT. Sandy says, Trump in jail would be lovely. Susan says, I mean, if I'm working, why would I want to defer my payroll taxes now if I have to just pay them back in January? It makes no sense. Well, what Trump is saying to people is he's saying, if you elect me, okay, then I'm going to get Congress to forgive those payroll taxes. Also, I'm going to get rid of payroll taxes entirely. So he's basically saying, I think I'm going to get rid of the trust fund, okay, entirely. Darren Brown says $250K per account. Yes. Lana says, Kay, more of us do every day, so I refuse to make that excuse. It's so frustrating. And Carmen says, hopefully AOC will run in 2024. Hopefully she can still be prominent enough to run in 2024. With Harris in the vice presidency, unless we get rid of Nancy Pelosi, okay, or neoliberals as a Speaker of the House, AOC is going to be under a lot of pressure. And Bill Stokes says Nina Turner 2024. Yeah, maybe Nina Turner 2024, but we have to see. And Lana says the Connecticut race has an interesting tidbit. The one that is so close, Thomas Gilmer was arrested for possible domestic assault. That's interesting. Who is Thomas Gilmer? Georgia 14th. Notes from New York Times. that Marjorie Taylor Greene would be a headache for GOP leaders, and she supports QAnon. Great. Perfect. She supports QAnon. So she's a Republican who supports QAnon. Wonderful. Okay, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for staying with me. I think that's my thing for tonight. I'll be back again tomorrow night with another live stream. I have now put up this week but 2 other videos. The overt congressional financing video, which was last night, and the Biden chooses Harris video. I think I called it, okay, on YouTube. Joe Biden just shot himself in the foot. I was given another name on Facebook, though. I think they edited my name, okay, on that particular video. So I have that. I have another 3 videos still backed up that I'll be releasing. One tomorrow. Well, actually, maybe 2 tomorrow. And one on Thursday. Then on Thursday night, okay, I'm going to have a Q&A where you can ask questions about any of the live streams that I will have done up to that point, and also any of the shorter videos. Darren says, keep up the shorter videos on YouTube. They help grow the channel. Thank you, Darren. I certainly will do that. And Dolores says, thank you and good night all. And Lana says, good night. And I will say good night too. And once again, thank you for coming. I'll end the broadcast now.